Welcome to the Drone Camps channel. I'm Justin Davis, and I am here to help you set up your FPV drone today inside Betaflight. This is a brand new tutorial for Betaflight, covering some of the topics that you may not have seen in previous Betaflight tutorials. So as of August 2025, this is the most updated recent Betaflight tutorial from Drone Camps RC to you. So we're going to start at the basic level here. If you've never set up a drone before or connected an FPV drone to your laptop or your standalone desktop PC or say MacBook Pro, something like that, we're going to walk you through these steps very simply. Now, the first thing you need to do is download this beautiful program that you see here on the screen, which is known as Betaflight. I'll put a description link to Betaflight, the latest version. Download that, install the drivers, and once you've done that, restart your computer and open up Betaflight. Grab yourself a USB cable that fits your quad, the flight controller, not the DJI Air unit or your VTX. So very important, you're connecting to the flight controller, not the VTX for this purpose, because I've seen some new guys try to connect to the DJI 03 or the DJI 04 VTX thinking that they're plugging it into the flight controller. So make sure you locate your flight controller, plug in your USB data cable. It has to be a data cable or it won't connect to Betaflight. That's number one. Number two would be, if you don't connect to Betaflight, it may be that you don't have the right drivers installed on your computer. So you're going to need to do that, restart the computer, and then we should be good to go. Up at the top of the screen right here, now you will see a series of different things happening in this bar right here. So manual, you'll see dev, TTY, USB modem, series of numbers, and then Betaflight STM32F7, whichever flight controller you have there that's connecting to. Go ahead and select that one. We're going to go ahead and connect, and we're going to walk you through the most basic settings here. So the first thing you need to look out for is your accelerometer. Make sure that your quad is sitting nice and level on your table or your bench. And we're going to go ahead and click up at the top right here, calibrate accelerometer. And you're going to see everything come to level. Mine's already been calibrated, so everything's good there. And now if you pick it up and move it around on your bench, you'll notice that it doesn't really line up with you. Make sure that the back of the quad is facing you. So we're going to go ahead and click another button here, and that's called Reset Z Axis. And that'll bring the back of the quad to you. So now when you tilt it forward, it should go forward, back, left, and right. And now we know that our flight controller is oriented right to the direction of travel for your drones. That's very important that everything is lined up properly there. So everything else on here looks good. We can go down to the next spot. And one of the next things you're going to need to look at is the port. So we're going to try to go through this step by step. Very simple, very casual, and easy to understand. Now, there are 6 different UARTs on the GEP RC Mark V that I have here. So if you have a GEP RC Mark V, you can follow along with this tutorial and it will match perfectly. Some other flight controllers out there may only have 1 or 2 UARTs available here. If you see UART 1 through 6, they have configuration MSP. They also have serial RX here in this column, telemetry, sensor input, and peripherals. So the first thing, if you're using DJI 04 or 03, you need to turn on configuration MSP right there. That's a little gold bar. Check that on, and you need to kind of know what UART it's on. And typically DJI is installed into the UART 1, like about 99% of the time. So turn that on, and then over on the far right, turn on peripherals. That's VTX MSP DisplayPort. And what that's going to do is going to enable your OSD to show up in your DJI goggles. Very important that you do that. Now you'll see the next one down says UART number 2, and it doesn't have configuration MSP connected right here, but it has serial RX turned on. And that specifically is directly for my antenna back here that's connected to my receiver. So this is the receiver setting for either TBS or ELRS receivers. So make sure you have that checked on, and you should be good to go. If you also have GPS, now you don't have to turn on configuration MSP for UART 6 or UART 5. We're actually on UART 5 for GPS. you don't have to turn on serial RX because they're not serial RX devices, but you will need to turn on a sensor input menu right here, select GPS, and now you should have GPS turned on. And so at this point, you need to save and reboot for all those different devices that we just added to the ports. Now, the reason that we went into the ports first for this first part of this video is because the ports is one of the most important parts of setup when we get to making your radio work with the flight controller and the drone. So if you don't see any sticks moving in the receiver tab, it may be that you need to go back to your ports tab and select the right UART. Now, a little bit of troubleshooting. If you're inside this tutorial and you're like, man, my receiver's not working, I'm not seeing any sticks moving in the receiver, you may need to figure out which UART your receiver is actually plugged into. Now, there could be, number one, that. So you can go down this entire menu and try each one, turning on serial RX on each one and going down. And be careful, it may reset everything you just did and turn everything off sometimes, unfortunately. That seems to be a Betaflight bug. But once you've done that and you've located which one, and maybe your receiver sticks are moving now, you see little colored bars moving back and forth in receiver tab, and everything is good. The other thing you can do if you have, say, a TBS receiver or ELRS receiver that you soldered up yourself, the yellow and the white wire, TX and RX, can sometimes be switched, and they're supposed to be switched on by default for everything to work right. Now, this is the other trick outside just trying every single UART for troubleshooting. Switch those two wires on your receiver physically, and then sometimes just like, it's on a certain UART, you have RX1 and TX1, and all of a sudden everything starts working once you switch those two wires physically on the receiver. So that's happened to me before, and it's very common. So let's move on to the configuration tab now, and you want to make sure that you have the accelerometer turned on. On this particular quad, we have 8 kilohertz on gyro update frequency, 4 kilohertz on the PID loop frequency. That's totally fine. And board and sensor alignment, if you're using like a 5-inch drone, most of the time, everything is set to 0 as far as the roll degrees, the pitch degrees, and the yaw degrees. And the gyro accelerometer is first, and the first gyro is at 0 clockwise degrees. Mag alignment at default, and you can leave all that alone. We can also come down here, and this is where you can add a D-shot beacon, which is essentially a electronic beeper to your drone. So if you don't have a built-in physical beeper on there, which some of the modern drones don't have, you can turn on RX lost and RX set tabs here. So switch those both on, and when you hit the beeper switch on your quad, then it will start electronically beeping. And some of them are louder than others. Some of the whoops have very, very faint, tiny little electronic beeps on them. Beeper configuration down here. A lot of this stuff right here, you can set, you can change and turn things on and off here if you want. We also have GPS on my Mark V, so you want to make sure you have GPS turned on. If you don't have GPS on your drone, just turn that off. You don't need it. And then it's going to take some menus off the sidebar here that you don't need or use. Make sure air mode is turned on. And also, one other note about air mode. Some people will put their quad on the ground and they will test their arm switch, right? They will flip their arm switch and air mode's on, and all of a sudden your motor starts spinning up like to high RPMs. And one of the reasons that it does that is because you don't have props on it yet. So it doesn't mean your drone is going to fly away. It's just the accelerometer is getting tricked, and your flight controller is getting tricked because it has no forces being applied to it by props. So that's one thing to think about when you're setting this up. Just if you have a safe place to line of sight hover it after you do this tutorial, that's always a great place to do it. A lot of times I like to do it under a roof in case it does fly up and want to fly away, or like a parking garage or something like that where there's no one around. Just do a little test hover, and then everything is working left, right, forward, back, and then set it back down on your landing pad, and you're good to go. And again, always avoid people and populated places when you're doing say a test flight for your first time with your FPV drone. Now, power and battery, we're going to leave onboard ADC set up so that our voltage meter source is working properly and it's giving us a proper battery value on our OSD. ESC sensor usually set to on there. Minimum cell voltage, I have it cranked way down to 3 volts. So for you, I would bring that way up to about, I'd say 3.3 volt or 3.35, which is about the standard. You can set the warning cell voltage up to about 3.45. You really don't want to fly per cell down past 3.45. So you really start to damage your batteries there. So go ahead and click save. And we are good there. And now we can move on to the next tab, which will be Failsafe. Now, 95% of the quads out there are set to drop if you lose any communication between your quad and your radio. And that's mainly what this tab is for. Failsafe, you can also put on a switch if you want and make your quad stop what it's doing immediately and go to stage 2 failsafe. And we're not gonna add it on a switch right now. We're just gonna leave it on stage 2 so that if it loses communication from my radio, it's just gonna drop to the ground. Now, if you have GPS rescue, you can switch GPS rescue on and you can turn that on as well. And at the very bottom, you want to make sure that this is not checked. Okay, if this is turned on right here, allow arming without fix, basically you're not going to have return to home and your quad is going to default to stage 2, which means drop to the ground. So we want to avoid the drop to the ground scenario with your GPS rescue. I've seen other YouTubers, reviewers way back when reviewing a 7-inch, I believe it was the Chimera, and it dropped to the ground because the arming without fix was checked on, and you need to uncheck that so you don't drop to the ground. So now it will, if it loses signal to your receiver or your radio loses connection, GPS will take over. The quad will level out, even inside acro, level out, come back up, return to home, and land. Super cool. So go ahead and save and reboot there. And now we're going to go back inside Betaflight. You can turn on auto connect, which I do like. Now, you know, I should have said this in the very beginning of this tutorial. This is a tip for new guys. If you get a bind and fly drone, this is not a DJI drone. I can't stress enough, do not update the firmware and do a full manual erase on your drone. You will eliminate all the settings in your drone, all of the factory PID tunes, and everything that makes your drone fly normally. You could even screw up your ESCs on certain drones. So by all means, do not update the firmware. This is not a DJI drone, and everything that comes to you from the factory is done sometimes by a development team or the sponsored pilots of that company. So don't do it. Do not update the firmware. Set it up. If it's not set up your radio and your receiver and your OSD, and make sure everything is the props are on direct correctly, and everything should fly great. If it doesn't, you can go to our website to try to find my custom PID tunes for certain drones on dronecamps.com. The CLI library and my custom PID tunes are on the website for you guys. We're adding new quads all the time, but do not update the firmware. So can't stress enough there. Now presets, this next one down, if you're using something like the DJI 03 or you're using Goggles 2, the Goggles V1, V2s from DJI, and your OSD is not showing up, you can use this right here, which is the WTF for 03 and Avatar. So this will it'll sort of force your OSD to show up in your goggles. If you're using Goggles 3, a lot of times you don't even need this one. And there's a whole bunch of cool little presets and things that you can use from Chris Rosser, other filter settings, and there's a whole bunch of different sometimes specific to different drones in here, like the AOS 3.5 V1 4S tune by Mouse FPV and others in here. Toothpick types of presets, and don't worry about all that right now. So we're just going to go down to PID tuning as well. And again, you don't want to play around with any of these numbers, especially if you're brand new to this. Just bypass this page altogether. There should be factory PID tunes already keyed into all of these numbers. And this is not a PID tuning tutorial, so we're going to move on now to receiver. And so at this point, there are two ways that you can see something moving on screen here. Now, one is just plugging in the cable. Smaller drones like little whoops will power up the receiver from the USB cable. If that doesn't work, you need to plug in a battery and then plug in the USB cable. And then sometimes you'll see these color bars start moving when you're moving your sticks. So we're going to show you now how this works when I turn on my radio. Okay, so to see things lining up like they are here on screen, what you need to do is disconnect your cable from Betaflight, plug in your battery, make sure your props are off, and then turn on your make sure your radio and your quad are both turned on, replug in the battery, and you should see something like this pop up. So with this particular quad, you'll notice that the bars are all looking different right now. Now, when I move some things here, I'm going to show you how this works out, and if they're not lining up exactly as how I show it on the screen, you need to change around your channel map. There are two different types of channel maps here. We have AETR1234, which is fairly default. It's a standard. We have also another version of that, which is for FreeSky, Futaba, and High-Tech. Spectrum, Gropner, JR, also TAER are also sometimes for Crossfire style receivers. And different Crossfire radios, so like the Tango 2 comes stock setup sometimes to TAER right here, and that just means throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder. That's what that stands for. So back to default here. Now let me show you what it looks like wrong first. Okay, now see how my quad is spinning around. If you see your quad show up like that on the screen, man, you got problems. So if you were to fly right now, this quad would flip across the ground and freak out and crash it happens so quick, you can't even press disarm fast enough. So I'm going to go ahead back to default there and watch what happens when I press save. So I'm going to press save. Bam, I'm already back to everything good here. So the way everything should work when you see it on screen right here, we're going to start out with grabbing the left stick, which is the throttle. So we're going to move it up. You should see throttle come up like this. Should become up and down just like that. Now we're going to do the yaw, which is on the yaw axis. So left should be left on screen and right should be right. And you see that preview you get with your rates. Depending on how fast your quad moves, it'll sort of simulate the movement of your quad on screen here, which is pretty cool. The Betaflight's done this for years. Now roll axis to the right like this, the red bar, left and right, should show you left and right. And this is about my roll flip radius right there, ratio. You can see that simulated on the screen. That's kind of cool. Now for our pitch, which is the E, which is elevator. So we'll go up and down. It should look like that on the screen. Pretty cool. Now our switches. You'll need to do a radio tutorial to activate your switches inside your radio. If you already have some active switches, they should show up here, and we'll double check those in the modes tab next. Okay, so I'm just going to trying to slowly walk you guys through this. Now my arm switch is SE, and right now I have props off on my quad. Betaflight has a new setting too as well, where it won't let you arm the drone when it's connected to Betaflight. Used to be in the olden days, it would let you arm with props on and eat yourself to pieces. So that's not happening as much anymore nowadays. We had a lot of injuries back in the old days. Now SA is my far left switch here. You can see that's on aux 2. SB is my beeper. You can hear that beep. Now S4 is SC, and let's go ahead and press save there. And now let's go down to the modes tab. And if you're just setting this up for the first time and you're trying to set up your aux 1, which is your SE switch, is the flat switch on the Boxer and on the TX15. So that's the one I like because it's out of the way when I press it and I don't accidentally press it. It's not a stick sticking up. So that's the one I prefer because it's harder to activate accidentally. So that would be your aux1 again. And if I press SE, you can see that gold bar moving there. Now let's take this off and let's pretend that you didn't have anything set here. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to click on add range, and then you see it's right now it's not working well. Okay, so if it's set to auto, trying to give you a scenario where it's not showing that it's working, but it automatically switches to aux1 right there. And the bar is not where I want it to be. So see how this bar is outside this bar? For ARM to be active, you need to grab this in the middle, slide it over there, and then press save. Okay, so now you can see the gold bar is here. That means it's off. The motors are not armed. Okay, so it's unarmed. When you press the button SE now it's armed. So we're gonna go down to angle mode here. And I was talking to somebody the other day about the flight modes that I fly in typically. Now, this will save you. It would really save you, depending on where you're flying at. If it's a sketchy spot, you're coming in for a landing, this will really help you. A lot of times I'll fly in an acro to the vicinity where I am. And then once I get a little closer to the ground, I'll flip back into angle mode. So I'll take off in angle mode and I'll land in angle mode. It just makes landing on the landing pad a little easier if you're a beginner. If you do it this way, this is a great way to just have a nice, safe landing without doing a lot of bouncing around off your landing pad. And that takes a ton of practice. Also, you can practice that in the simulator to try to do smooth landings. It will take you, maybe some people, if you're younger, a few weeks, maybe a few years for some of us that are a little slower. So SA is my mode switch here, and you can see the gold bar right here is moving out, and this dead space out here, this gray space, that's acro mode. So if you're looking for acro mode inside here, it doesn't exist. So you'd be looking all day for how in the hell do I add acro to my quad? It's just not there. Okay, so I'm gonna unplug this battery. We're going to check to make sure everything's still working here. Okay, good. So go ahead and save that. But if you didn't have angle, let's go ahead and add range, not add link. And remember, we're going to add that on aux2. That's the SA switch there. And see the bar got reset. So we're going to drag that over. So that's the first thing that starts up the switch all the way up on your radio to position 1. And if you're using the TX15, you have 3 positions on that one switch. So technically you could also have aux2 here. Right now it says aux1 for some reason. We're going to switch that to aux2 so they match up on the same switch, right? So SA is in stability mode there and angle mode. Now, if it's in the middle position, switch position 2. Now you're in horizon mode, and then all the way down, drifting out into gray space out here is acro mode. So now you've set up your flight modes. Very simple. You have 3 different flight modes on there. You have angle, horizon, and acro. Now we can scroll down to GPS rescue. I have that set to SC, which is my aux4. And again, you can go back to the receiver tab and look at this and test it. Okay, that's truly aux4. Now my flight mode's there. That's aux3. Okay. And it looks like the beeper may be somehow set up into... No, that's actually my beeper. There we go. SA. I made a mistakey. So aux3 is going to be SB. So this is here. We're going to delete this again so you can see. We're going to add range. We're going to set the beeper to aux3, which is going to be SB on your transmitter. Okay, so save that. But again, like if you want to have it all the way to the last 3rd position down, pushing it 1, 2. Okay, save. And now you see when it's on position 2, see it's floating in space right here. It doesn't do anything. But when I enter position 3 all the way down for the SB switch, now I get a beep. So I have an electronic beeper and I have a physical beeper on the Mark V, which is cool. So you can have both, or you can have one or the other, whatever you want to do. Now, as far as GPS rescue, again, aux4, you can add other things in here like camera control. You can have up to 3 cameras, switchable cameras on some drones. Flip over after crash. If you have a tiny whoop, sometimes you'll put that on there. And a lot of times I put flip over after crash on aux4 because most tiny whoops are not sporting GPS. So I'll swap out the GPS on aux4 for the flip over after crash. I just like to put that on SC on the right side of the transmitter. Just makes more sense to me. But you can do that again, and you know to slide the bar over, or you can extend it if you want to, have it on position 2 and 3. So I'm not going to use that, but I'm going to just delete that and save there. And we have also options for LEDs. If you have LEDs set to a certain port, you can turn your LEDs on and off using things like user 1 or user 2 or user 3. And there's a bunch of cool stuff in here that you can do, but that's the basics for the modes tab. Okay, so now we're over on the GPS tab, and I'll just show you a few things here about GPS working properly. Now, if you have GPS enabled, like we showed you to do earlier in this tutorial, you will see information on the signal strength down here, and you'll see that you're receiving packets. So these green things right here are the signal strength. We have status and we have quality fully locked. It looks like we have 9 satellites there. So that's good. We also have altitude, we have speed, we have heading, we have current latitude, longitude, distance to home there. And if you're not seeing any of these, it means that you're not connected. Now, one of the number one things people try to do is they try to do their GPS setup indoors. So I would say to go take your quad outside, get an open line of sight to the sky above, and then turn your quad on and set up your GPS configuration. If you do it indoors, sometimes you're just scratching your head wondering why you're not getting satellites, because you can't get satellites with some GPSs indoors. You want to set it to mostly is going to be on U blocks, and you want to set to auto config there. So, and if everything is working properly, you'll see your current GPS location show up on the map like Google Maps, which is cool. And then you'll see the 3D fix up here say true. And again, you don't want to arm without fix. That is very important. That records the home point and gives your quad somewhere to fly back to. And now we're moving on to the motors tab, and this is super important for putting on your props correctly. If you ever need to look at your drone and figure out how, say you broke a couple props or they flew off your whoop, or you just need to figure out which prop goes on which motor, this is the diagram for that. So connect your drone to Betaflight and then go to the motors tab, and it will show you how the direction is set up on your quad. Now, standard quads are set up to standard right turn rear motor that you see on motor number 1 here, and they're always numbered the same: 1, 2, 3, 4, just like what you see on the screen here. So motor number 1 is turning to the right, and so you will need a right turn prop on that motor. Motor number 2 is left turn, and typically with this type of setup, and even if they're reversed, you'll see that the motors on the diagonal from each other turn the same direction. And that's true for most quadcopters on the planet. So that's how it works. So once you get used to this sort of default setup, you'll know how to put your props on forever, which is great. You can test motor direction inside the Betaflight app, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take the top nut off of the motor and I'll use a little, say I'm using testing a 5-inch motor direction, and what I'll do is I will take all the other props off, put that one little 3-inch prop on there. Do not put the nut on top of it. And you can come over here to this tab right here, and you can turn on the tab right here to say you understand the risks. And then you can just momentarily move motor number 1 or motor number 2, and you can check your prop direction by just flicking that up and down slightly. Don't go full bore with it, because the little 3-inch prop will fly way up off the top of the quad and maybe hit your ceiling, but it won't fly over and hit you, most importantly. So do not test your motors with your props on and locked down to the quad, because you will have a severe reaction and maybe an injury for yourself or someone else. Be very, very careful there. As far as ESC motor features, this is usually going to be D-Shot 300 or 600 nowadays. You can leave the bidirectional D-Shot on You're not doing 3D there. This is going to be for 3D setup only at the very bottom. Now motor poles should be already set up from the factory there, and everything else in here looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and move on to OSD. Now OSD can get very simple or very complicated very quickly. Now depending on if you're using analog or using HD, we already talked about presets. If you're using the DJI O3, if you're using DJI O4 Lite or the Pro, you can make sure that you have it set to HD on this menu. Very important that you have it set to HD, because if not, things may show up really wonky on the screen there. So very important that you have HD selected right there. So there you can see it on the screen just above my head. And we're going to go now and show you some of the ways that we can change things on the screen. So let's go ahead and grab on one thing right here, and we can move things around. So if we grab and drag something, see, it won't highlight unless I click on it, click on my, say, let's do the satellite up there. Say I wanted the satellite count over here on this side of the screen somewhere. You just drag and drop it. See that? It just, and it won't show up in your goggles. If you have your goggles on sitting next to you and you're trying to set up your OSD, your quads has a battery plugged in, it won't show up as moved until you click save. So make sure you click save. Once you do that, you'll see it move on your goggle screen. Pretty cool. So we're going to drag it back, and you can get super custom with this. So click save there. And this is the way it appears, a little larger on the screen here. But this will be fine for DJI types of setups. Now, if you are running something like analog, you'll need to select something different than HD. So in the video format, I'm going to turn this transmitter off. So in the video format right here, you're going to want to switch it, maybe most times, 90% of the time, over to auto. And sometimes they're set to PAL or NTSC, but typically if it's set to auto, you'll see that the screen gets much bigger. See how everything jumped up really big there? Now, this is a DJI O4 on my Mark V, so I would not want to set it to this. This is only for the analog guys. Now go ahead and go back to HD here again, and save if you're on, say, the O3 or O4. And now we should see a much larger screen here. See how everything is spaced out properly. So everything's really big on your screen. It's likely that you have auto set on your flight controller. So save that to HD and we're good to go there. Now we can go down to video transmitter. If you want to put some custom settings into your video transmitter, you can do it from this one, this tab right here. We're not going to do anything fancy on the DJI transmitter because we do that inside the goggles. But if you have an analog one, you can change some things here and play around with stuff in here. This is a lot of fun. So black box as well. Some of these flight controllers, most of them since 2016 or 2017 have built-in SD card support. Some of them have, say, 16 megabytes or more of flash memory built into the flight controller as well. And you can see mine has some space here. It says card ready, and it also has free space up to 458 megabytes. So that's quite a bit more than we used to have back in the old days with our F3 and F4 flight controllers. Now down to the CLI. Now, after you've done all these settings with your quad, you want to do what we call a dump, and you want to save this to file. So right at the bottom of your CLI, click on the prompt and type in dump and hit return. And this will load all of the settings that we just did on your quad to the screen. Now, I could select all of this manually if I wanted to and copy all of it, or we can do the really easy way to do this. Instead of copying it, we could save to file. And so then we could just save it to the desktop on our computer, and this would be Mark V. So we're just going to save it something as Mark V here. Gap RC Mark V. This is the DC version. And I'm going to save that. We'll save that to the website for you. So if you want to find the backup file for for the Mark V, you can go to dronecamps.com, the CLI library, and I will save this as a Google document file for you. So if you ever mess up your Mark V, you can go back and get these settings that we've done in this video. And if you want to do it the quick way, you can grab that document, copy that entire document, and you can come over to your CLI, connect to your quad, and then you can paste that inside this prompt and then type in save afterwards, and it'll load all those settings that we just did to your Mark V. Now, don't try to do this on some other drone besides the Mark V because it'll really mess up your drone. So, but that is today's tutorial, and hopefully you learned something in this video. If you did learn something, I would say please do become a Patreon on the channel. Maybe give us a tip on this video if you want to. Join us on our live streams and tip me in Super Chat. There's so many ways you can give back to Drone Camps RC. Go on the website, get yourself a hat and a t-shirt, something like that to support us as well. So there's not a lot of support out there at midway through this year. Coming up to Q4 in 2025, it seems like a lot of the channels are kind of dying off, and I'm still here to support you guys. So I just want to let you know that I'm not giving up on our hobby, and I will be here to support you. So please do become a Patreon, and if you can't do that, just subscribe and interact with us on the channel and the community. So join us. It's a lot of fun, and again, I hope this helped you today. So that's the end of the Betaflight tutorial for August 2025, guys. Take care. Click the like button, please. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.